Comet C2025F2 SWAN and some listener emails on episode 480 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up the night sky, and this podcast is for everybody who enjoys going out under the stars. So how was your week, Shane?
Oh, pretty good. Finally getting into some really nice temperatures here, so it's been quite enjoyable.
Sort of like the golden weeks here. We have about 2 weeks between when the snow is gone, or I guess it's mostly gone now. There's still a few little snowbanks around, and when the tick season starts.
Yeah. It's and then all of the bugs start to come into play. Mosquitoes, all of the fun stuff.
Yeah, I find everything I can deal with, but the ticks last year were just every 3 or 4 years there's a bad season, it seems. So I'm hoping this year isn't as bad.
Yeah, no kidding. I don't like ticks at all. I can deal with anything else, but I don't know, they drive me crazy.
Yeah. So we were saying at the start, I got a pair of the ear pods finally and trying those out to record today. So if it doesn't sound good, then I'll try something else. I was just using something really cheap here, and I thought these would at least be better, but we'll see how it goes. Did you get any observing in this week?
No, I did not. Um, yeah, just sort of busy at work, and I'm trying to think. There was a few clear nights though. Yeah, no, unfortunately I didn't. How about you?
Mm. Yeah, there was a couple clear ones. Only Saturday morning could I really take advantage of. And I went out and took a look for Comet C2025F2 Swan. It's been going through some outbursts, I guess is the best way to put it, because it's been brightening up. I think it was supposed to be like 10th or 11th magnitude, and it had brightened up as much as 7.8 or just under eighth magnitude, and it's pretty low in the eastern sky. Right now, here this morning, we're recording this on the 13th. It's passing by Alphecca there, which is the top right star in the square of Pegasus. Sorry, top left star in the square of Pegasus, and it's the sort of bottom right star in Andromeda. But I didn't have any luck. I spent some time looking for it. I mean, I shouldn't say that exactly. I went out with my binoculars, and with the full moon or almost full moon in the sky was pretty washed out, eh?
Yeah, for sure it was. Even though it was technically, I think the smallest moon or a tiny moon or whatever they were calling it.
Yeah,
It's
micro moon today, I
micro
think.
moon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think is 7% smaller than a super moon. I was reading, like it's super hard. Like I can't imagine you'd be able to ascertain that visually, but
I don't think
um,
so.
yeah, but it's still bright, right? And it definitely washes out the sky. What I find a little amusing about this comet is, I think last time you and I recorded, or a recent session, I think when we are doing
Yeah.
maybe the April observers calendar, we said there's no bright comets in sight.
Mm,
Nothing that was forecasted, and of course we put the caveat that this can change, so stay tuned. And lo and
literally
behold, it changed.
4 days later, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it changed.
incredible.
So yeah, it's kind of weird in a way. Um, but I went out, yeah, I tried to see it. Like, I don't know, maybe I kind of sort of did. Like, it was one of those things where I thought I could convince myself that I could see something in the spot after I went back and forth with the chart like half a dozen times over 20 minutes.
Mhm.
But at a certain point, you're like, well, I'm not really sure.
Mhm.
I wouldn't really call it an observation so much. Um, and it's very low, but I could see it from my driveway, or what passes for my front driveway, which is really just my lawn that I park on out here, and set up the telescope just behind the trunk of my car, which is a little hatchback, which is great because I opened that up. So that kind of kept me shaded from the moon. So I was sort of in darkness.
Mhm.
So immediately I wasn't getting reflection of the night. I thought, well, this is about the best chance I could get. And the trees are kind of budding out here, so I was sort of in and amongst them too, and looking away from the moon, or at least 90 or 100 degrees away from it. But yeah, it's so low. Like when I first picked up Alphecca, it was literally in the weeds at the top of our hill here to my northeast. And I was thinking, oh, this is just going to be too low. Like even if you have a perfect
Mhm.
horizon, trying to see an eighth magnitude comet that low, even if it's eighth magnitude, which I think it was more like ninth magnitude by the time, or maybe even close to 10 by the time I was looking for it, that's not realistic. I in my 12 by 36s, I don't think there's any chance. So I was using my 60 millimeter with a 12 and a half millimeter eyepiece in it, which what does that give? Like 30 or 40 power, 30 power, something like that. So I
Mhm.
was hunting around for it for, like I said, half an hour or so. But yeah, I don't know. So this comet, it was just picked up recently, hey?
Yeah, yeah. And I haven't really read like on cloudy nights if people are having success or not. This one definitely caught me by surprise.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting. Now, the first thing I saw was Nicole Mortalero's article. And I was in a meeting with her this past week too, so that's kind of weird. She's the senior science correspondent for CBC, but I volunteer with her as well. Um, anyway, so she had written this article, and then I wasn't so sure, like oftentimes, when you see these articles spinning around, what does it really mean? And then, when you first look at the numbers and you're thinking eighth magnitude, well, that's not too bad, and that it is visible in northern hemisphere. But yeah, this one is now predicted. So C2025F2 SWAN, discovered by Soho Images, by a few people now. It seems independently reported it back on the 29th there and the 31st of March. But by being designated C, that means it's a long period comet. And F2 just denotes, I think it's like letter and then number of them, like sort of the months are each split into two letters and then the number of comets that have been discovered, and then SWAN is the instrument that was used to discover them, which is a camera on the SOHO satellite. Um, it was reported as being 11th magnitude when they found it, and then it had brightened up, but I think it's dimmed down. I know that I was in a meeting on Friday, and one
Mhm.
of the observers there said that she had seen it in a 10-inch, but that she figured it was barely ninth magnitude when she saw it. And I had hoped that maybe it would brighten up again so that when I went out, maybe it would be eighth magnitude, which I think I might have been able to pick up. But yeah, whatever I saw there was sort of almost beyond fuzzy.
Mhm.
So not much luck. But they're saying though that this could get as bright as fifth magnitude now, um, plus or minus a magnitude. And that's when it comes into the evening sky on April 30th. But I don't know. It's very, very low in the sky. I think I did put it in our notes for the next show that we're doing. I'm just gonna flip ahead here and see. But I think we only have a handful of nights here where we're able to see it in the morning sky, though, sadly.
Yeah, which is too bad. But hopefully things work out because the nice thing about when it's expected to be its brightest, it'll be during new moon, so it's ideal conditions to try to catch this thing if we can.
Mm,
But like you say, with it being that low on the horizon, there's still going to be sort of some twilight glow and darkness. Is definitely a lot later now, especially for us. A little further north, which makes this
yeah,
even more challenging.
yeah. If it was, it would have to be quite a bit brighter to see even as low as where it was. But I think at maximum it's 10 or 12 degrees up in the morning sky. I guess 10 degrees now. And
Mhm.
and over the next few days it gets lower by about half a degree each morning until of course it's gonna getting close to the sun, and then it's going to come back around in the evening sky, and that's going to be about, I think, the week that this podcast drops, and it's going to come up I think in Taurus or thereabouts, and at its best, which is going to be sort of the April 29th to May 2nd period of time, it's going to be near the Pleiades. or at least heading towards the Pleiades from the northwest and move in. So it's going to be within 5 degrees of the Pleiades, I think on the 30th or the 1st of May. Um, so it's getting in there. But sadly, I only put it at 1 to 2 degrees high in a dark sky for us anyway. And that can vary depending on where you are. But I don't think it's going to be that much different for anybody else in the northern hemisphere, just simply because it's very much almost due west at that point. So I don't think your latitude is going to impact it too much here, until you maybe get on, into the very far north where you're going to have so much more twilight, or very far south where the Pleiades is going to be really close to the horizon. But for us here anyway, 1 to 2 degrees up, a fifth magnitude comet only 2 degrees high is pretty tough to see.
Yeah, it really is. But it gives us, excuse me, a little bit of excitement and something to shoot for anyway at the end of the month.
Yeah, Shushan Atlas was about magnitude 2, and when it was at these altitudes, I had trouble picking it up.
Hmm.
Not that we had amazing conditions. We also had the moon in the sky, and when the moon's out of the sky, if it's more on the brighter side, might be possible. But they've been. I think the media have been just looking at the numbers, because they look. If you just sort of Google, how bright does a comet need to be naked eye, and then they see it as sixth magnitude, and then they look at this comet and say, well, it's going to be fourth or fifth magnitude. Therefore, it will be visible to the unaided eye. But I can tell you that a fourth or fifth magnitude comet, 2 degrees high on the horizon, is not a naked eye object. In fact, even with a good telescope, I think like a 8 or 10 inch telescope is going to be what you need pointed at the horizon to see it.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be interesting. I guess we'll wait and see. Like as we talked about when we recorded last time,
Mm,
these things are so unpredictable. It could just fade away and not even reach the like kind of currently forecasted magnitude. It could potentially get brighter. So we'll
yeah.
just have to wait and see.
Yeah, and it's worth going out. Like once I saw that it was going to be clear, I was coming out here. I'm going to
Hmm.
try for it, because if it was supposed to be 11th magnitude and it was 8, if it had another outburst on top of that and it ended up being like fifth magnitude or something, that would have been cool. And these things happen. Like if you go out and do this enough, you will see that for
Yeah, yeah,
sure.
yeah. It can, again, it can happen in the blink of an eye, literally.
So if people have been able to see it, or in particular, if anybody's been able to sketch it or take images of it, I would certainly love to see them. You can send those into actualastronomy@gmail.com.
Yeah, exactly. And
There's,
yeah, any observing reports, any photos, we'd love to hear or see.
yeah, there's got to be somebody out there who's seen it. I know some of the folks at the KW Center, they were able to see it. I was attending their meeting on Friday evening. So
Mm. Yeah, very
we
cool.
had maybe we'll move on to listener emails. When we recorded the last time, I put a few of the listener emails together because I wasn't sure if we would make time on the last episode, and then we had no trouble. So then I just sort of carried them over into this show. But then I added a few up top, Shane, a couple people that I hadn't responded to. I don't know. Did you see that email from Lyndon in Campbell River? And I don't know if you had a chance to respond to them.
Yeah, I did see it, and I had not responded. But just before we get into these,
Oh, sure.
just one kind of gear update that I don't
Oh,
know if
okay.
you noticed, but Teleview announced another new eyepiece, which I think is pretty cool. It's a 20,
Another new one, like
yeah,
like on top of the Type 7s.
yeah. They announced. I think it was. Well, I wonder if I got caught up in a April Fool's thing, but I thought I saw on Cloudy Nights that they announced a 24 millimeter Delos.
Oh, let me take a look.
Yeah, no, this is real. So it's on their
April
site.
5th.
It's yeah, 24 millimeter, 2-inch eyepiece, eye relief of 22 millimeters. So
Hmm.
if you're a panoptic person, and some people find the panoptic 24 millimeter to be a little tight with the eye relief.
I really, yeah.
I'm one of them, and This one with the 22 millimeters of eye relief will be great. Well, might even be too much for some people, but certainly accommodating for eyeglass wearers.
Mm, yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. I mean, not super exciting though, because I think, the what's it called? The APM flat field 24, and then all those associated ones that have been out for a while now are in that sort of 68 to 70 degree 24 millimeter. But I think they tend not to transmit as much light, perhaps, as what a teleview eyepiece um, would. Interesting that it's a 2 inch though, because I think those are all one and a
Yeah.
quarter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that is surprising to me that they went 2 inch on the Delos here, but um, yeah, it is like this whole line of Delos eyepieces are renowned for their transparency and light throughput, and I've never looked through one, but read
Mm,
nothing but good things about these eyepieces. So kind of interesting, and it's great to see that Teleview is continuing to put out some new stuff, and I'll be excited to read some of the reviews of this as well as the Type 7s.
yeah, it makes me wonder if maybe they're even going to extend it further. Maybe do like a 30 something and something close to a 40. You could theoretically do a 40 millimeter with 72, because I think the Pentax is, I mean, I'm just, talking out of my ear, but I think it's just over 70-degree true field, or apparent field, I should say, because the true field seems to match up with something a little bit closer to 72. And I'm sure the magicians at Teleview could figure that one out if possible, or else they could do like a 38 72 or something like that, which would be a very interesting eyepiece for sure.
Yeah, although I wonder then if they would start to discontinue the Panoptic line because you're starting to bump into a lot of those focal
Right.
lengths with a similar field of view.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you might as well at that point,
Hmm.
um, for sure. I mean, it would be really interesting to see the comparison between the Delos and the Panoptic, but didn't they discontinue some of the shorter focal lengths in the Panoptic?
They might have, like, I want to say the 15 and the 19,
Yeah.
possibly.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, because they're still doing the 24, the 35, and
Yeah.
the 41.
40, 41. That was
Yeah.
it. Yeah. I feel like there's not a lot of market to have a 35 and a 41. Um, my recommendation would be to come out with like a 38, but really nail it, which I'm
Yeah.
sure this does, considering how much time has gone by since the Delos has come out. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Like really great to see a company still innovating after all these years. Yeah, I'm really curious about these new Type Sevens. I sure wish that the dollar was doing a little bit better for us here.
Yeah, that'll be very expensive for Canadians
Yeah,
in the current state of economics.
I think at one point I guesstimated it was going to be $1,250 for one of the Type Sevens, and I
Mm.
think I think that holds even today. So we'll find out. I mean, hey, if Teleview wants to send us a full set that you and I can split or trade by, or each of us a set, or even just one to split, I'd be happy to do that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Likewise.
Yeah, cool. Sorry about that. I should put a note in to ask about any gear updates. I was hoping you were going to say you bought one of the Teleview
Mm-mm.
sevens.
No. No. Yeah, well, this doesn't happen super often, right? Where there's new
Yeah.
stuff hitting the market, or at least, within my purview, there's probably more releases out there than I'm fully aware of, but
Mm,
as they come
very
up, we'll
cool.
try to highlight them.
Very cool. So back to Lyndon, if we're good to move on to that.
Yes. Yeah, let's do it.
That email. It's very, very short, well written. Thanks for this, Lyndon. Lyndon writes, Hi, Chris and Shane. My name is Lyndon. I'm a young astronomer ambassador from Vancouver Island, BC. I organize sidewalk astronomy events in my community to help get people interested. I've been enjoying the podcast and want to say thanks for sharing your knowledge with the amateur astronomy world. I had a couple of questions I'd love to hear you talk about on the show sometime. What are your favorite underrated lunar features to show people through a telescope? And how did you first fall in love with the sky or get started with your first telescope? Thanks again for what you do and clear skies. Lyndon, Campbell River, BC, Sidewalk Astronomy Organizer, Northern Astronomy.
Yeah,
Very
cool.
cool. Wonder how much sidewalk, wonder how many sidewalks there are in Campbell River. I've never been to Campbell River. Have you?
Nope, I have not.
And I sent him back a few questions. I think last night, just when I was making up these notes. So maybe we'll hear back. I was curious to find out how much how much traffic they get, what they're doing, if he's doing any other of his own astronomy, what he's using for gear. So hopefully we'll hear back in the near future. So maybe I'll just pose this question to you, Shane. What is your favorite underrated feature, lunar feature to show people through the telescope?
Well, I don't really have one, to be honest. I don't observe the moon enough to know, at each of the phases, what might be interesting to show people or an underrated
Mm,
feature. The way I like to observe the moon is, take out like a lunar map and just try to, like, as I'm observing, reference the map to see what I'm
mm,
seeing. Like what's the name of that crater, what's the name of that mountain range, all of that kind of stuff.
mm,
And that's really how I go about it. But for me, like what I love the most on the moon is the mountain ranges. Like when
mm.
there's a number of them, and if you catch them at the right time, where
Yeah.
they're in shadow, they like the three-dimensional view that you get is just outstanding, and like the detail within these ranges are incredible. So though,
Hmm.
like if you can get a night of good seeing where you can crank up the magnification and just start perusing those areas, it's just, I love it. It's so enjoyable.
Yeah. Nice.
How
Nice.
about you? What's your underrated feature?
Well, I usually am not showing people the moon through the telescope at all. I'm trying to think the last time it would have been more than 10 or 12 years ago, because mostly any of the public astronomy I'm doing is at dark sky sites, and then we're doing it when the moon isn't in the sky because we're going out
Mhm.
there during the new moon period. But I'll give you a couple things, and this is something I don't even think I've ever mentioned this on the show. I'm gonna break it up a little bit here. So I'm going to give you one that's actually something you can see with your eye, and you don't need a telescope at all to see, which is the Turby white spot.
Okay.
Don't know if you've ever heard of this before. This is really cool, actually. So you can see it as long as typically when the moon is close to full, and this is just above and to the right of Copernicus. And what it boils down to is about 10 or 12 years ago, maybe 12 or 13 years ago now, Clark Muir from the KW Center and he and I were doing all these lunar sketches of the moon with the unaided eye. He actually did one this past week, which is super cool. Anyway, and we were trying to figure out what you could see on the moon just with your eye, without binoculars or without a telescope, and without kind of cheating so much. And I was trying to see Copernicus, but I was looking at the moon, looking at the chart. I'm like, it's not in the right spot, but you can definitely see something. And then I found out that there is this Turby white spot, which which is visible just above and slightly to the right of that. But anyway, what that is just sort of an albedo feature more than anything. And I think it was Cassini who discovered it. But you can't really see too much there through the telescope or not. It's just kind of a reflection. Kind of try to Google it really quick here, but I can't find anything too much off the top of my head really quick. But there are a variety of bright spots on the moon, and why these are kind of neat to see is once you start seeing um, these different contrast type of features, then other contrast features start to pop out. It's just that's the easiest one to see. And once you see that one, you'll start to see that there's these other features, and it gives you more contrast between the light and the dark areas. It allows your eye to kind of adjust and then fixate on different features. So that's an unaided eye one that I enjoy showing people, but you really can't see anything there through the telescope, or at least I've never been able
Mm-hmm.
to.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Um, yeah, yeah. For the binoculars or the small telescope, I like seeing those thin crescents. And there's one coming up in May. We'll have it in our May notes. I like either seeing the really old or the really new moon. And there's the opportunity to see a really new moon that's like 1% illuminated, not 1%, but it's like far less than 10% illuminated, like a 10-hour old moon here in May. It's in the observer's calendar too, which I still got to get you a copy of. So that's really good for your low power binoculars, really is going to be your best shot at seeing a new moon. And then through the telescope, I really like those escarpment features. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, whether it's the straight wall, I think there's another one. There's like an S or canyon or something like that, which I think is also a type of an escarpment or a lava tube that collapsed or something. Um, I really like those kind of features to show on the moon because I think it's well known sort of how high they are, and typically I'll look those up if I'm ever showing people the moon at first quarter or something. Usually I'm pretty good at being able to find that one just off the hop. Need about, I think, around 100 power. It starts to look pretty good. But in the observer's calendar, Lyndon, if you have a copy or able to get a copy, I think I still have a spare copy if you want one. Um, and uh, and in there we've put a variety of other features that we'll talk about month to month. But Marie Noonan has come up with a few, like the jeweled handle, which is a bunch of the, I think, part of the mountain range. I think it's the Apennines. Don't quote me on that. And then
Mm-hmm.
like the Wurtenen pancake, and there's a handful of them that she's come up with to stick in the calendar, which can be worth showing folks. These would be some nice features to track down too.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great suggestion.
All right. And anything else on that first question, Shane, before I move on?
Nope, that's all.
I always hate it when I feel like I've rushed you because this is no rush.
No, no, we're here for a good time and a long time.
Exactly. All right, Shane. So, how did you fall in love with the sky, or get started with your first telescope? Okay, let's break that down into two questions. How did you fall in love with the sky?
Yeah,
The sky, not this guy, but the sky.
there's a couple things that did it for me. Um, so I was raised outside of Regina, like outside of the city, in a small
Mm,
town, kind of a bedroom community. But it was certainly darker than the city, and seeing the Milky Way every night was a thing, as long as there was no clouds around. So many nights, you look up and you see things, and I've always had a natural interest in science, and
mm,
space has always been just a part of that. And so, as a kid, I would read a lot of, sci-fi books and as well as nonfiction books about space, and was super intrigued. So I would buy the odd astronomy magazine. I had one for Halley's Comet. And, as my parents saw this interest develop, my mom took me to a public observing night for the local astronomy club here in Regina. So they had, I think it was that 4-inch, who made that
for
telescope?
sure.
For sure, yeah. Uh,
Yeah, 110 mil, I think, or 112.
s-
Anyway,
yeah, beautiful brass telescope, very vintage, and it was housed in an observatory, and they just happened to be looking at Saturn that night, and it blew my mind when I looked through the eyepiece. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and that it was that accessible, just through a ground-based telescope. It really looked like a photograph, and that really cemented my interest in astronomy. And then, my first telescope, well, I kind of have two first telescopes. One was something I bought at Winners, a department store telescope, and it didn't work very well. It was really hard to get this thing pointed at an object and sort of lock on the object. You know, you
mm.
you might be able to sort of get it pointed, and then once you tightened everything up, well, now it's not on that object anymore. And the finder was terrible. So the only thing I could get, like the only view I had through that telescope was like a real fleeting view of the moon, and it was a terrible view, and it was terribly frustrating. So that telescope really, while it was my first one, it's not my first real telescope or usable telescope without a bunch of modifications. It was like one of those little reflectors, I don't know, like maybe a 3 or 4 inch reflector on a crappy tripod and a crappy mount. But my first real telescope was an 8-inch sky watcher. And once like early on in my career, I'm suddenly making more money than what I'm used to. I decided to do some research. I bought the Backyard Observer's Guide by Terence Dickinson and Alan Dyer,
Mm,
and used that to really educate myself on what I should be looking for. And then, found a proper telescope company here in Canada. It's funny, I don't remember where I ordered that thing from. It's been
mm.
about 20 years now. But anyway, that was my first telescope. It came with a couple of Plossls, and it really was everything I needed to get going. And my first views through that were the moon as well, because it's fairly easy to find when it's visible in the night sky.
Nice,
Yeah. How about you?
nice.
What did you first fall in love with the sky, and then what about your first telescope?
Yeah, I sort of can never remember a time when I wasn't interested, and I think there's a variety of reasons for that. Just that I grew up in a small town. Certainly, you could see the stars from there. I mean, they would be, you know, those skies were about on par with what my cabin is here now. They were probably about that good, and certainly with younger eyes. Um, but then we also had a place way, on the coast, and we spent the summers or a lot of the summer down there. Just basically, it was a milk shed that we had converted into a cabin, or a cottage, as we would call it. And anyway, from down there, it was pretty dark. And so you could really see the stars. And I used to like sitting out. We had of course, on the ocean, if you want to tie your boat up, you got to have a dock. And we had a floating dock with a ramp. And as the tide would go out, that would become a great inclined place to lay down and look at the stars. And I think I was about 13, and I decided that I would learn as much as I could as far as the constellations went, because I had recognized they were the same constellations from night to night to night, at least in the summer, but I knew they changed throughout the year. But it took I'm guessing about 4 or 5 years before I really started getting sort of my head around how to do it and how to get into it, and got a pair of binoculars and some books and that sort of thing. But I guess when I was about, I want to say 7 or 8, maybe, my uncle had recognized this and had bought me the world's cheapest, crappiest Tasco telescope. And it was truly a horrendous instrument, which was, probably the equivalent, maybe on a good night, of what your 6 by 30 finder might see. And it came with this tiny little rickety tabletop top tripod. And you had to look straight through it. And I remember we set that up at his place, inside, of course, looking out the window. Well, they and my parents went over to a neighbor's house for a Christmas party or something, and they ended up getting it focused on what I now know is Sirius, because it was the brightest thing that you could see out this window, and their window faced south. And just looking at that, I was like, huh. I thought I would see like UFOs and aliens, and it was a bit of a letdown. I kind of scanned around a bit, um, and you could see more, but it wasn't like as much more as what you're hoping for when you're 7 or 8 years old. But anyway, that was kind of my first foray into looking through a telescope. So, but it was about 10 years later, when I was about 18 or 19, that I ended up getting a good job in a factory, and buying my 8-inch f6 reflector. And that's a pretty big step up, but it wasn't a very good one. I had sleeks on the secondary, and something was wrong with it, so it could never be properly aligned. So it probably worked like an okay 5.5 or 6 inch telescope, maybe at best. And but the first thing I looked at through that was Mars, actually, and was able to see the polar caps even. And that kind of really blew me away because going from my very first experience looking through an instrument to actually, having a proper one that you could see the polar caps on Mars with was really quite awesome.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that's a real evolution, a quick evolution there to you know, some or like really get into the hobby and see what is possible with a telescope.
Yeah. But between all that, like my mother would always be cutting out like you get these little sky maps from Terrence Dickinson in an article. I don't know whether it was every month or every week. It's probably just every month. And she would sort of cut them out so they wouldn't get lost or whatever and kind of leave them on the table when I was having my breakfast. I remember her doing that a pile of times or a neighbor doing it or somebody doing it. Anyway, I think it was her. And that really kind of kept my interest going. And you go out and try to see meteor showers or aurora or whatever. But yeah, it wasn't until I was about 18 or so that I really kind of started putting all that together and doing it. But yeah, it's one of those things you sort of persevere, and it's just really nice to be out under the night sky. But certainly I've owned a few telescopes since. And this past year has been really cool because I've finally been able to build my own observatory. So
Hmm.
thanks for the email, Lyndon. It's really
Yeah,
nice.
yeah,
Appreciate
that's
that.
really good. I like the questions.
Yeah. Been chatting with Royce. He's somewhat new to astronomy still, I suppose, but he's rebuilt 4.5 and 10-inch Dobsonians. I put a shot. This is just from our own personal correspondent Shane, but just to kind of show you, in essence, what it looks like. So at first, I thought he rebuilt a Skywatcher, but I think what he did was he went and found a used 10-inch and then rebuilt it into this, which I've included as an image for you, which is a really lightweight, portable, truss style telescope. Pretty neat looking, eh?
Yeah, really cool.
He did the 4.5-inch first, which I got to admit is, as far as telescopes go, pretty cute looking. It's this tiny little tabletop thing that folds down, and I mean, it looks like it's like a thick laptop almost in size, and then you can sort of extend it into something that looks like a miniature version of this, which is really quite neat. So he's been both looking through telescopes, recognizing some of the deficiencies in what's commercially available, and then started to build his own, which I'm always pretty envious of people that have that kind of level of skill to actually put together these sort of instruments. It's really neat to see.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, very cool.
Now, yeah, speaking of telescope building, I attended the KW Center meeting on Friday night, which is they do it over Zoom, and as many of the centers do now. So it's kind of cool because I used to live in Ontario where the center is, and still have lots of friends. In particular, Peter Pecure, who has built a 16-inch f3. Um, Very low to the ground telescope, weighs only about 34 pounds. Pretty cool.
Wow, that's an incredible instrument. It's just so hard to imagine a 16-inch telescope that is that light and that short. Wow, I would love to look through that once.
Yeah, Peter's the gentleman who built a lowrider 25-inch.
Hmm.
I think it was F48 or something like that. And I was able to observe through that on a handful of occasions from reasonably dark skies. And it had a tertiary mirror. Yeah, it came up. How did it work? The light came in, and then it had this big 7.7-inch war surplus secondary. I feel like it had a third mirror too, but I can't remember exactly how it worked. Anyway, but the light beam was, instead of coming out at 90 degrees, it came out at 33 or 27 degrees or something like that. So it would shoot down the tube, and then I think he just had an eyepiece, or there was a third diagonal in there that enabled him to bring the light path out, but it didn't come out sideways. It came out more down.
Hmm.
But by sitting and then pointing it up and looking, it was almost like looking straight through a telescope, so to speak. But 25 inches like that, looking at the Saturn Nebula was pretty cool.
Yeah, no kidding.
Um, we've got an email here from Richard from Oakland. He sent a whole pile of observing notes. But Shane, maybe do you just want to read it down to where he says, "Here are my observing notes," because
Yeah, sure.
it's a bit detailed, and I know we're getting on time. So
Yeah. So Richard said, Mark and I once again traveled to Henrico State Park on Monday, March 24th, 2025, for an observing session. Astrophysics predicted above average transparency and excellent seeing. In the end, I thought transparency was quite good and the seeing above average to average throughout the course of the night. I left late morning to snag a campsite so we had a comfortable spot to sleep after observing. My drive from Oakland was uneventful without too much traffic. A quick stop in Morgan Hill for a Burger King lunch, and I was on my way up into the hills. I found campsite one empty and decided to set up base camp there. I asked the ranger for permission to use the overflow lot, and it was time to pitch the tent and take a rest. Mark arrived around 3:30, and we spent the rest of the time chatting until it was time to head to the overflow lot and set up our gear. I brought out a new to me Atlas mount and an AR 127 Explore Scientific 5-inch Acromat. Mark brought his excellent 10-inch Dob, and we shared views throughout the night. We usually bring similar sized scopes to our sessions, but it's nice sharing views from two different scopes and two different types of objects. I was on my second outing working from Sue French's Celestial Sampler. It's 60 small scope tours are divided by month, and surprisingly, I chose to work the March essays. I completed Double Your Fun and Winter Clusters Galore. It was getting late when I started Dog Overboard, and I missed the open clusters NGC 2354 and 2362. I observed these two objects in the early 2000s in a 12.5-inch and 16-inch Dobbs. I wasn't impressed at the time. Perhaps I'll enjoy them more in a wide field refractor. Oh well, maybe next year. I jumped to an April essay and observed the objects in Stalking the Leo triplet. Pretty easy since they all fit into one eyepiece field. The observation of the night was M42 through a bino viewer and a UHC filter. I used simple 25mm Plossels and was amazed at the detail we were able to see. There were intricate white clouds of gas swirling around the trapezium and bright streamers trailing out of both sides of the eyepieces. We were getting tired after 4+ hours of observing, so we packed up and drove the half-mile back to our campsite. I was in my sleeping bag by 1 a.m. and quickly fell asleep. And here are my observing notes. Over to you, Chris.
yeah, so I don't think we'll go through all the observing notes here. They're really cool. He observed some doubles and lots of open clusters in Gemini, and some planetaries, and lots of clusters in Puppis and galaxies. So thanks a lot for sending that to us, Richard. Richard will every month or so send us an observer report, and really appreciate you sending those on to us, Richard. Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm going to move on to John's email. John wrote, I'm a Patreon supporter and really appreciate your podcast. Found it about 6 months ago and have been binge listening to all the previous episodes starting at episode 1. I am now on episode 436. So thank you for listening, John. Not sure if you've ever called Takahashi and talked to Chris Mortiseri, who is their USA rep. If not, should try to get him on as a guest. He is extremely knowledgeable about Takahashi scopes and very friendly. You got me interested in an FOA 60, so I called and talked to him about that scope, and it led to a used 180C Mulan, which I just ordered. So that's pretty cool. He goes above and beyond, helping to understand the product and best utilization of different scopes. Well, congrats on the telescope. I did write him back and ask how he liked the Mulan. He wrote, it is a used Mulan. I just got it a few weeks ago, only tried using it a few nights, and not enough time for cooling down, and not the best transparency in eyepieces that gave me above 50x. Seems okay. Not as sharp as a refractor, but I did not expect it to be. Talked to Chris again at Takahashi about the mirror. Just looking at the mirror in normal daylight, it looks fine. Shining a flashlight on it shows a whole bunch of water spots. Talked to him about cleaning the mirror. Um, and he said not to do so unless it was really, really dirty. Also gave me some guidance on how to clean it if I plan to progress on doing that. He plans to test it a few more times just to see and to make sure the optical alignment is good. Scope itself is very nice. Typical Takahashi quality. This size is also just right, not too big, and easy to put on a mount. The finder scope that is built in is an awesome idea and a very convenient handle. I got a little tack crazy over the past few months and purchased several of their scopes in anticipation of my upcoming retirement. Buying scopes now while I'm still working and funds are better available. I'm a refractor guy and honestly have more than I can look through for the rest of my life. Currently have the tacks in 100 millimeter 76 with the 1.7 extender, 60 millimeter, and the 1.7 extender for the 60, and a bunch of Teleview and Stellar View eyepieces. It sounds like the largest scope he has is a 127 millimeter. I'm guessing that's the Stellar View, and currently waiting on a used Takahashi FC76, a new FOA 60, and he says, thanks, guys. I got interested in the FOA 60 after listening to your podcast. You guys do a great job. Just the right blend of observing and equipment and guests. Your podcast have replaced my listening to Sirius Radio while I'm in the sky. Well, thanks so much, John. Really appreciate that. And Shane, you have the FOA, correct?
I do. I got it kind of late last year, so I haven't really had an opportunity to put it through its paces. But that'll be my focus now that it's warming up. That'll probably be my most used backyard telescope this summer. Just again, getting used to what it can do. I do have the Q extender as well, so that's in the focal plane, and I plan to leave it there. But it's a wonderful little scope. Just the build quality is incredible. The draw tube on the focuser is quite long. The dew sheet, like everything about it is just really, really nice. And optically, the couple of views that I had through it were just outstanding. So quite excited to use it more this year.
Yeah. So you want to read the next team? I just put a Shane and Reed at the end, and then he included a bunch of images that didn't make it through to the show notes there. But do you want to just like a few paragraphs
Of Peter's here?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So he says, hey, Chris and Shane, I was at CSV for 3 nights, Wednesday through Saturday last week. The visit was originally planned for the new moon this week, but given the weather forecast, I decided to take advantage of the nice weather and fourth quarter moon conditions. It ended up being a memorable visit with clear skies each night, although it turned chilly as the evenings went on. I recently installed a second pier on my lot at CSV so that I can do visual astronomy as well as imaging. The visual
And
highlight. Oh, go
I
ahead.
just wanted that's the Chiricahua Sky Village. Peter's chatted with us before on it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. The visual highlight of this day was first light with a Skywatcher Star Travel 150 that I got from the UK. This is a 6-inch f5 achromatic doublet that weighs only 14 pounds. It is not sold in the US. Celestron used to have the Omni XLT 150R, which is identical but has been discontinued. I got this scope for low magnification, wide field viewing. You have an earlier email about how this came about with advice from Chris. I used it last week with the 32 Masayuma eyepiece, which is 22 times in the 6-inch, and got really nice views of several wide field targets, including M42, 45, 41, 46, and 47. It should have roughly the same field of view as my FC100DZ. I'll compare them directly soon. I guess it will be aperture versus the vastly superior glass in the TAC. I'm currently working on setting up the AM5 as an alt-as mount for visual observing, but I'm still working on perfecting the Go 2, and that took some time for observing. And then Shane and Reed. Okay, done.
Yeah. So that's a neat combination. The FC100DZ has a 800 millimeter focal length, if I recall, so a little bit longer than the the 6-inch, which is going to have 750. That should be a neat comparison. Yeah, I would love to
Hmm.
hear more. And yeah, I don't know. I really get putting these larger refractors on the go-to mounts and trying to get that squared away. I've done that with my 7-inch now. Um, Simply because like once you get up, even like my 5-inch, it's when I have it on the Takahashi Altaz manual mount, it's a bit much. They start to feel like a bit much of a scope. So I really get putting it on that AM5. Very cool. Peter sent along some images of. I got the notes. It just doesn't have the images for some reason. Markarian's chain and the flaming star and tadpoles in Auriga, and M46 and M47 and planetary nebula 2438. And he ended up saying that he really enjoyed taking a look at those clusters, and had sent along a really neat picture of his little cabin, which looks almost like a just like a storage shed. Really, is kind of what it looks like. I'm really curious about the Chiricahua Sky Village. Really want to take a trip down there and check it out one of these times.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like a great place to observe.
Yeah. So those are the emails that I had. Anything to add to this episode, Shane?
No, that is all, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Peter, John, Lyndon, and Richard for sending emails. Those aren't the only ones we've received in the past month, but thought just touch on those. It seems like sometimes it goes for a while before we get back to reading some of the emails people send in to us. But if you want to send us your emails with observations, show ideas, or questions, please send them along to actualastronomy@gmail.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.